Neville Chamberlain's appeasement strategy was very controversial. Was it right? Was Chamberlain trying to achieve peace? To find that out, we have to go back to Chamberlain's early career. After the disaster of World War I, the British public was furious with the ruling statesmen in power, responsible for the war, sending thousands of young men to their deaths. And because of this, by the 1930s, wanted a politician who would promote peace. That man would be Neville Arthur Chamberlain, from the Conservative Party. Chamberlain proposed an economic recovery, industrial reforms, preventing another war and maintaining peace. Chamberlain would work his way up Britain's political ladder and would become Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in 1937. Though by the time Chamberlain became Prime Minister, political tensions in Europe had risen. Despite Chamberlain's pro-peace stance, most of his reign would see Europe on the brink of all-out war. Before becoming Prime Minister in 1935 as a top government official in the previous Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin's government, Chamberlain had pushed for the rearmament of the British Royal Air Force, primarily to combat Nazi Germany. Despite this, when Chamberlain became Prime Minister, he wanted to avoid hostility with Nazi Germany in order to ensure peace in Europe. Chamberlain wanted to erase tensions in Europe, but he primarily focused on domestic issues such as trade unions and labor. With this, Chamberlain was not unpopular, and his tenure was stable at home. That would all change when Chamberlain's test would come in the 1938 Czech crisis. Now, I've already made a video talking about the Czech crisis, but I'll explain it differently here. In summary, Czechoslovakia was founded as a somewhat artificial country in 1918. It was founded after World War I out of the giant Austro-Hungarian Empire. Now, the problem with Czechoslovakia was that it was not made of one or two people groups. The country had a lot of ethnic groups, out of which the Czechs and Slovaks were the only two majorly represented. The problem with this was that foreign powers wanted to invade the surrounding non-Czech and non-Slovak regions. The surrounding countries wanted to take over the lands which had their people in them, which put Czechoslovakia into an extremely weak position. The first most threat to Czechoslovakia came when Germany wanted to take the surrounding German-populated regions, called the Sudetenland. The Sudetenland held 3 million Germans and had an independence movement known as the Sudeten German Party, which Hitler had already affirmed support for. In response to the German Sudeten independence movement, Czechoslovakia began constructing a fort line in 1935, aiming to stop a German invasion. However, in March 1938, Germany invaded Austria, bypassing areas of Czech defenses and further surrounding the country. Austria's invasion was surprisingly unopposed, with German troops just marching in. Many people don't even consider it an invasion, as many Austrians who were ethnic Germans accepted the unification with Germany. In response to Germany's invasion and increasing aggression, Chamberlain took 3 main steps. He sent a letter of protest to Hitler in Berlin and officially condemned the invasion, while also giving a pretty boring speech about it in Parliament. This was part of the wider policy known as Appeasement, where Britain and France did not prevent Germany's and Hitler's expansion. Now, historians are very disputed on appeasement, but there are 3 main theories on what Chamberlain was actually thinking. The first theory is that Chamberlain was foolish enough to think that Hitler actually wanted peace, and that he was trustworthy. The second theory is that Chamberlain's appeasement was so disastrous it allowed Hitler to expand in the first place. And the third one, which I agree with, is that Chamberlain knew that war was coming, and that Hitler was evil, but was smartly delaying the war to make sure Britain was strong enough to fight him. France had formed an alliance with Czechoslovakia, and Britain had an alliance with France, keeping Hitler at bay. The British and French Prime Ministers, Chamberlain and Edward Daladier, met in London to discuss the Czech issue in April 1938, and agreed to follow a similar stance. By mid-1938, the situation escalated when Czechoslovakian border guards killed 2 Germans in the Sudetenland. Chamberlain's overall plan would be to push Czechoslovakia to make concessions and give up territory, to achieve peace, delay a war, and buy time to build Britain's army. By September 1938, Hitler delivered a speech escalating the situation and demanding the liberation of the Sudeten Germans. British intelligence services told Chamberlain that Germany would invade Czechoslovakia on 25 September 1938. In response to this major development, Chamberlain developed Plan Z, which was to visit Germany directly and negotiate with Hitler's cabinet for peace. Hitler accepted Chamberlain's request of flying to Germany to negotiate, and Chamberlain landed in Munich, Germany for the negotiations on the 15th. Hitler met Chamberlain for the first time in a face-to-face meeting. The first set of meetings lasted 3 hours, in which Hitler assured Chamberlain that he didn't want to take the remaining part of Czechoslovakia, and didn't want to reunify other German areas in Europe. The meeting, called the Berchtesgaden meeting, made Germany and Britain reach an agreement that elections, also called a plebiscite, would be held in the Sudetenland to decide whether they would join Germany or not. In return, Czechoslovakia would gain guarantees of safety internationally. The French, British, and Germans agreed. Now Czechoslovakia was left to agree. The British and French pressured the Czech government so hard that the Prime Minister resigned, and only then the Czech agreed. Chamberlain flew back to London and was relieved, as he had bought enough time. The situation worsened when Germany began an indirect guerrilla warfare with Czechoslovakia by supplying and arming paramilitary German armies to attack Czechoslovakia. Hungary and Poland also began to press their claims over territory in the country. Europe was on the brink of war as tensions over the Sudetenland escalated. Germany prepared to invade Czechoslovakia while France guaranteed its safety, forcing Britain to act. Meanwhile, Poland and Hungary pushed for Czechoslovakia's breakup, and its government was in disarray. In this disaster, Chamberlain flew to Germany again on the 22nd of September 1938, and this time both sides were angry as they inched closer to war.